Hi, and welcome to another episode of Spinster Stories, where I spin yarn and tell spooky stories. Today's story is a bit of a weird one. It is about Albert Ostman. He's a man who believes he was kidnapped by Sasquatch in the summer of 1924. So, before we get into the details of that, I promised some finished yarn. So, here it is. Um, It's a very nice orange merino that I was spinning a few episodes ago. Ended out really nice, super soft. Probably gonna make some socks with it. So if I finish those, I'll show you. And without further ado, let's get into today's story. So, like I said, it's the summer of 1924, and we're in Fort Langley, Columbia, where Albert Ostman decided to go on a prospecting trip all by himself. So he's out in the wilderness, about 75 miles north of the Toba Inlet. And, he's doing his thing, he's camping, having a good time. And then one night he gets ready for bed, he sets up his tent, gets all cozy in his sleeping bag. And then in the middle of the night, this creature breaks into his tent, ties the drawstring around his neck, tightens it up so he's just trapped in his sleeping bag. And this thing just tosses him over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes and just carries him off to the wilderness. A little bit of time passes as this creature's just hiking through the woods with him, and they get to a cave-like shelter that was just kind of in the middle of a rock cliff. And when they get in there, Albert sees this thing that had taken him. He described it as an old man, about 7 feet tall and 500 to 600 pounds, super hairy and naked. And then he realized that he wasn't alone in this cave. And there was also an old woman, also naked, super hairy, and about 6 feet tall. And a young woman, also naked, super hairy, about 6 feet tall. So there's just a whole family of what he described as Sasquatch, family of Sasquatch. And he described them as human, but very primitive in nature. So super weird. And this family of Sasquatch, just kind of let him live in the cave with them. And they would give him their food. They shared with him. They were on a diet of just nuts and fruit. There's no meat. And, they weren't hostile. But if Albert ever tried to leave the cave, the giant old man would just block the entrance, so he couldn't get out. So he was pretty much trapped. They were kind of holding him there. And then after a few days, he's been in there for about a week. He gets super desperate to escape. He's kind of sick of hanging out with all these Sasquatch. And then he just pulls out. He had a tin of tobacco in his pocket. Pulled out the tobacco, and the old man sees it, super interested in it. So he ends up taking it from Albert and eats the entire tin. It's a brand new tin of tobacco, completely full, eats the entire thing. And that made him violently ill. So while this Sasquatch is super sick from eating all the tobacco, Albert takes his chance to escape. And he gathers up all his stuff and just escapes the cave. And that is the story he is sticking with. I'm not sure. I believe he was kidnapped by some Sasquatch, but something weird probably happened way out in the wilderness. Maybe he ate some funky mushrooms and was hallucinating a little bit, but whatever happened, he had an experience. And that brings us to the end of today's story. If you have any suggestions on future stories you would like me to cover, or have your own spooky stories, feel free to send them in. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Spinster Stories.